Hi everyone, welcome to my review of Steven Spielberg's Warhorse from 2011. So yes, finally back to talk about another Spielberg, and it's been a while. I think it's been a couple of months now since I reviewed a Spielberg, and that was Hook. So yes, been a while, and of course, it's kind of been, and this is of course, yes, another spoilers review. So if you haven't seen the film, be warned. We'll just say it now at the beginning of the video. Will be a spoilers review. We'll be going to some of the plots and certain deaths and stuff. So yes, certainly a warning there. You've not seen the film, definitely check it out before coming to this review, hopefully. And yes, as I was saying, yes, my output recently has not been too frequent, really. At least compared to my past sort of months, really. A number of reasons for that. The main reason in the last week is I think. We'll quickly talk about that, indirectly maybe, but yes, I think all creators have got a message, last week, saying about the new changes, of course, to YouTube, and I'm not going to get into it, kind of in depth or anything, but certainly that kind of shocked me. I know a lot of people would say, why would that shock you? You're not doing certain things, with your content. It's not this, it's not that, but. Of course, one of the things being, it does actually say about animation, and of course, you need to look at my channel once and see that I've got a playlist, for almost 50 animated reviews, and I was very unsure, if you're not a creator and you're not aware of this, it's basically a new change, of course. It does affect everything really, involving things like that, and I was just concerned whether or not I could actually review an animated film. I'm clueless. I'm absolutely clueless about this. I think no one actually knows really exactly what this kind of change means and exactly what are the guidelines. So everyone's kind of worrying, of course, and some people are completely leaving YouTube. Of course, you'll be seeing that. I don't plan to. I'll just let you know now. I don't plan to do that because I think you deserve to know. But I will potentially have to consider certain things. If I can't review any animated films or talk about them, or even show particular maybe a steelbook of a Disney or anything like that ever again, then I just can't. I simply can't. Maybe do that at all, and I can't. If I can't review any sort of animated films, then of course that's just the way it's going to be. I don't know what to do with my my current videos on that, but yeah, I think. Certainly going into next year, there may be some changes to the channel, but films like this, of course, I guess I can rest assured that this is not falling into any of the categories. It's not kind of going against the guidelines. So I think I'm fine to review this film. I did have some plans, unfortunately, and maybe they will be postponed, for the channel and stuff, and involving animation and everything like that. But animated films, but. It's just the way it is, but I thought I'd update you, of course, quickly on that. And yes, moving on. This is a film I feel comfortable that I can talk about. I'm allowed to talk about. I guess. And yes, this film, another Spielberg. I think this is a film that clearly is not very popular. It came out a few years ago, of course, and I saw this roughly, kind of a year after it came out, and I heard some mixed things about this film, although I personally really looked forward to the film, and I saw the trailer and everything, and it just really appealed to me. Of course Spielberg, always kind of gets me excited. So yeah, it's a film that clearly, as I say, it's not a popular film. It's kind of some people do really like the film. I think it did get quite a few nominations and stuff, but generally a lot of fans. This is not a film that they respond to. A lot of people hate the film, and yes, I first saw this film, as I say, just after it came out. I've since seen it twice or three times actually, maybe since, and since my first watch, and I can safely say that I'm probably in the minority here. I think this is just. And once again, just even better this time around. I think it just gets better and better every time I watch it. It's kind of like a real comfort return, this one. And I think, something about the film as well. There's a real return to classic cinema that I love. And I think, yeah, I'm in the minority. I actually think this is a stunning piece of work. And actually, it's certainly one of my absolute favourite recent, I guess, 21st century Spielberg works, and I think it really is just, in some regards, in many regards actually, a return to form, really, for Spielberg. I think it really is a stunning film, and just highly emotional in my opinion, and it's of course just this Spielberg magic that I think is kind of slightly lacking in some of his other recent works. He's doing different things, and that's great. Always excited to see his work, but this is a real kind of it's kind of a little bit of a return for me, in my opinion at least, to more of that feeling, that magical kind of whimsical feeling. A lot of his past films kind of felt like, and also just a return to classic cinema. I think what I mean by that is the way the film is shot. The whole look of the film, the kind of the way the film is edited, and just I think this whole kind of the way it feels. These characters, the kind of the charm to it. There's something about the charm to this film that really feels like a classic film, and I just love everything about the film. And I think really, I'm absolutely fine if people don't like the film, but it really is a kind of, a film that I'm quite surprised is this, kind of, it's not really talked about too much, because I do think actually this film is a great, great film, and well, yes, I think it's one of his finest works, really, in many, many years, and I think it's not top tier Spielberg for me, not one of his very, very best, but it's certainly for me one of his masterpieces, and I think I can say without hesitation, I really do think this is just one of the best films, really, of the century, at least one of my favourites anyway. And I think 2011, a great, great year. I think there's a few films I prefer to this. I will say them now. One of them being The Tree of Life, absolutely, definitely, and probably The Artist as well. I think I do prefer to this, and I've only seen it once, of course, but I think I take that over this. Very close, in different ways, and there's a couple of other ones really, but this is right up there with one of the best of that year, and I think the decade, of the century. It's among my favourites. Of course, as we know, it's a film that kind of set just before and during, of course, the First World War, and the ending, of course, just right after that. But most of the film is during the war, kind of thing here, and of course, set in Dartmoor, and actually one of the locations, of course, being Dartmoor. Many, many different locations within the UK, of course, as well. It's kind of real horses used, animatronics, and a little bit of CGI in there, for this whole kind of bringing, this kind of whole film to the screen. It's a film that, it's kind of this perfect blend, I feel, kind of practical and kind of CGI here, and it really is a wonderful film. It's hard to talk about, of course, just because, when I describe it, I guess a lot of people will be thinking, I can't believe, you're kind of saying this, but yeah, it's just my opinion. I do, yes, of course, not everyone will kind of like the way that the film is very, everyone say it's a bit too much with the kind of whimsical feeling, perhaps. I completely understand that, but not everyone will kind of respond to this kind of film. But yeah, I think, I think it's a film that I do truly respond to, and I do love every moment of the film. I love the first 40 minutes, of course, set in Dartmoor. With Albert, of course, is this this teenager, and basically, you see him training this horse, Joey, and that's really Joey is technically the protagonist of the film. Although it's done a bit differently. For example, to the actual to the book, of course, it's not quite seen through his eyes. Of course, it'd be very hard to do that for the film, but it is. He is technically the protagonist here, and it's kind of a film where after that 40-minute mark, the beginning, of course, events happen as we know, and they're separated. Albert and Joey are separated for quite a few years, and of course, Albert eventually joining the war, fighting, of course, and Joey being used as of course a war horse, and it's a very, very interesting film. It kind of it's an adventure film, and it kind of keeps it kind of takes us on a tour, perhaps, you know, in different locations, different characters. You could say a lot of the middle of the film is, you know, kind of short stories within this whole film. You know, there's different characters who you see interacting with Joey and kind of forming a bond, perhaps, with Joey, especially, you know, one of the stories, of course, involving the grandfather and Emily, you know, of course, her grandfather. Basically, that's some of the main parts of the film as well. And you know, it's stuff where in and out, you know, kind of weaves in and out of the different characters here that kind of show up, and different things happen to these characters. You know, some tragic, of course, but of course, as well, it's kind of lovely kind of messages of hope that kind of Joey kind of brings to these characters, and it's the responses, of course, you know, from many different characters in the film and how they kind of treat him, and basically, yes, just, you know, respond to this and kind of care for the horse, show kindness, of course, and just, you know, of course, he's put through, you know, kind of the ringer, of course, as well. You know, one of the really, really, you know, graphic scenes being, you know, when he's caught in the barbed wire, of course, you know, towards the end of the film, and you know, he's another companion as well. This other horse, of course, that kind of is with him throughout a lot of the film, and as we know, you know, that horse, of course, does die, and you know, that's a really, really just a sad moment there. Of course, you know, it's a very, very emotional film. This, and you know, many say that, you know, that it's just because there's animals in the film and stuff, but I think, you know, it's done in such a way. It takes more than, you know, just to have animals in the film for it to be emotional. You know, when things do happen. I just think the way the story is told, it's truly so wonderful. You know, the way I got wrapped up in this at first. And then, of course, going through this journey, the separation is key here. You know, you see, of course, Albert and Joey at the beginning of the film, and they form this bond. And then, of course, you know, as we know, it goes off to different, you know, kind of locations. Joey, of course, always in the film, but, you know, interacting with different characters, and you know, the tragedy in the film, of course, being, you know, the different stories. A lot of the people do, as we know, die, and you know, but this horse, you know, keeps going, of course, as we know, and just it's such an inspirational kind of story. This, and a lot of people, yeah, they won't respond to it, but I really, really love this film. I think it's a pure, you know, kind of you know, magical film. I think this film, and just one that, yes, it's very, very dark at times, and also very tragic. So it's a perfect blend, really. This film, and it is a war film, of course, as well, technically, but you know, I don't really consider it too much of a, you know, technically, you know, a war film. It just happens to be, you know, set and stuff in the war. It is more just kind of a drama, an adventure film, a kind of a film about friendship and hope. But yeah, of course, you know, it's not. It's definitely, you know, is a war film as well in many regards. But yes, you know, just, I think the thing that just keeps the narrative going is this kind of bond that was established at first, and the kind of the emotional journey that continues throughout that, and the kind of the way that in the final act, of course, as we know, Joey and Albert, of course, once again reunited. You know, and that is just a wonderful, wonderful moment for me. I think, you know, just very emotional. Brought me to tears. You know, moments towards the end of the film, and you know, just one that, yeah, it's very, very, you know, it's a pleasing film. It kind of has a happy ending, but then you've got this tragedy underlying about all the people that have died, you know, throughout the film, and you know, just, you know, of course, speaking to the actual war itself, World War One, and really, truly, I think a wonderful way to kind of explore this, but also at the same time explore the friendship and the bond between, you know, a trainer and it's, you know, and an animal, being a horse in a film, and it's just a wonderful kind of, as well, ode, I think, for Spielberg, you know, to classic films. There's actually, you know, a kind of shots towards the end, of course, that are, you know, kind of quite obviously tributing Gone with the Wind, and that was great to see that. And I think also I kind of got from this, you know, John Ford films. I think this film is made very much like at times a John Ford film, and I think the themes, you know, family and just friendship and hope, you know, and the whole kind of the feeling of the film, you know, it does definitely feel like a John Ford film. Maybe The Searchers, you know, or The Grapes of Wrath actually as well. Very, very similar in terms of feeling. I don't think it's as good as them films, but it doesn't have to be. It's a film that has that kind of similar kind of feeling at times. I think that's wonderful to see, and just a really, really beautiful film in every regard. And I think the actual war scenes themselves, there's not really any blood too much in the film. So this, of course, this is more focused on, being kind of a family film. If you kind of see it like that, there's not really any too much gore, perhaps. In the battle scenes, say like Saving Private Ryan, but it's a film where the battle scenes themselves, I think, are quite stunning, to say the least. I love the way that Spielberg kind of brought this together, and of course, you can't forget the John Williams score has pretty much always an absolutely stunning score. This is absolutely wonderful. In the opening, of course, Dartmoor, 1912, and just going throughout the entire film, the whole kind of the score to this is truly, it's epic. Of course, it's adventurous, it's innocent. The kind of moments at the beginning, there's innocence to the score, and of course, it's truly emotional as well. And I think it just is used so wonderfully. The score to the film, constantly kind of making it more emotional, and just the flow of the film is just really faultless in my opinion. I really think this is a masterpiece, and I think the score is one of the many things about the film that's just stunning to behold, and it really is so connected to the emotions, the kind of the journey, of course. All the characters go through, and just a wonderful achievement. And one of the best films really for me of the century. All these characters as well, just wonderful characters here, and writing, of course. Richard Curtis, one of the the people working on the script here, and bringing this to working with Spielberg on the script, and just a wonderful cast of characters here. Just always so invested, I feel. Of course the performances. Wow, and Albert, is such a likable character. The performance, of course, by Jeremy Irvine is just absolutely brilliant, I feel, and definitely an underrated maybe performance here. I think Peter Mullan, as always, is great. Same can be said, of course, for Emily Watson, playing Rose, the mother, and of course Ted being played by Peter Mullan. Just absolutely brilliant in the film, and these flawed human characters, I feel, kind of played by wonderful actors here, and you've got many other kind of actors here. Maybe just in 10 minutes of the film, or maybe less than that. But you've got Tom Hiddleston as well, in the kind of one of the early kind of stories. The kind of after, of course, Albert is separated from Joey. Of course, that's when Joey gets sent off to the British cavalry, and of course Tom Hiddleston is one of the first people to kind of die, of course, as we know his character, and truly emotional there. And I think all these moments are just treated with such kind of sincerity and humanity, even though, of course, for example, Joey is getting bought off, of course, by James, played by Tom Hiddleston. I think it is really done in a way where you can kind of understand certain things, and it's not kind of you're not completely angry at these characters, perhaps. It's done in kind of a human way, and it's really sincere, I feel. This is the kind of thing when Joey gets kind of brushed off to different characters. Certain people start taking him in and stuff. Most of the time it's done in a kind of I feel a human way, a kind of way that's not one note. It's not kind of heavy-handed, I feel, personally. And I just think pretty much every story is kind of full of humanity and kind of characters that you kind of you can get invested in, I feel, and kind of understand a lot of the characters. There's a kind of scene, of course, with these two brothers. That story there is very short-lived, and already within that sort of 10 minutes or so, there's so much kind of tragedy in that, and I think humanity and kind of struggle. And it is basically it's kind of all these different stories that are getting told, all rolled into this kind of this film here, this one film, and kind of pretty short, really, for an epic in that sense. Just over kind of, it's a 2 hour, 20-minute film, really, without the credits. But yes, I think quite short then in that sense, but it's a massive scope, and of course it tells so much, in kind of in that sense, so little time, you could say, and it really is a wonderful film to behold. All these performances, as I've said, absolutely stunning. You've got Liam Cunningham as well. Just all these actors, so good. David Thewlis, mainly in the beginning of the film. I love as well this whole kind of first act here. Setting up the struggle of this family. It's just it's got comedy in there as well. I love the comedy in the film, especially early on. It's kind of very, very, kind of upbeat feeling at times, and kind of a light film, you could say, at times at first. But then, of course, it does, kind of change tone and stuff. And kind of it's more intense as we go on, going to the actual war itself, and then, it's a harrowing film. It's a very disturbing film, I feel, and it's just a kind of never breaking the tone. Just many, many different kind of flavors, perhaps, in the film. Different, Spielberg is able to kind of adapt. I kind of feel here, within the different stories and kind of the different tones here, very, very easily, with ease. It's kind of never a film that I feel is kind of disjointed or messy at all in terms of the tone. I think it's just always so perfectly balanced, in my opinion, and just, I think, just the whole kind of way that this, you could say that the landscape and the whole kind of the way this is such a natural film, and the way it kind of acts as a character itself, we could say, like the best films in this vein. I think the setting, the way it's the shot, the way it's edited, the use of music as well, and just the overall the life here, the way it's portrayed is kind of a character of its own. It's kind of one that just is truly beautiful. You've got the kind of of course, different effects and cinematography for the war scenes themselves, but when, for example, the beginning of the film, the kind of the ending parts as well, there's a real nostalgic feeling, I feel, with this film, and just the ending shots, I think, are just wow. I mean, there's a couple of shots there, as I've said, kind of referencing different films, classic films here, but they're shots that are so extraordinary, that I just got brought to tears by this. Just the visuals alone, I think, and just the use, the sunsets here are truly, truly stunning. And it really, the last shots, of course, I think is just really heavenly. And of course, it just, an ending that I really loved as well. The satisfying nature of this, really, really something else. And I think, just once again, I think this is better than I remembered. Just a truly masterful film, in my opinion. This is a wonderful film. So invested in these characters, this whole kind of narrative here. Despite it could have been a film that's very, very messy. But no, Spielberg, for me, along with Kubrick, the greatest storyteller of all time. I think, and it's certainly when he's on form, he makes it seem easy, to tell a story like this. A lot of characters, a lot of things going on, and of course, very interesting structure here, but one that never feels like it's kind of, Spielberg is struggling at all. One that you kind of, what I get, certainly so emotionally involved in the film, and the main character, of course, being Albert, that kind of is involved with Joey, and when you see him, and I love the transition as well. There's a kind of transition, different bombings, of course, artillery, going into the trenches, and then that's when you see the British. I love that transition. There's something about that kind of sequence there, the way the film kind of then goes back to kind of focusing on Albert. Something that's so great about that moment. Kind of the way it's been branching off for quite a while, maybe at least an hour really, and then of course we go back to Albert and kind of see how things have changed, and then we follow him once again with his friend as well, that's from Dartmoor, and this friendship as well. I love that kind of, friendship there, the relationship, so kind of, enjoyable at first in the first act, and then of course, things happen later on in the film, and it's such an emotional experience, and all the way going back to kind of to Dartmoor, and back at the auction, of course, with Joey, and there's a moment there that's just one of the great, for me, kind of scenes, just of Spielberg's, kind of modern films, and of course that is when, of course, the grandfather, bids for Joey, and then of course we think, at least you would in the first review that kind of course, the grandfather is now going to take the horse, but then, of course, through kindness, I love this about the film, the humanity in the film. He does eventually give in and let Joey, of course, return to Albert. Of course, that's a really sad moment, that kind of bittersweet moment. The grandfather saying that his only memory of his granddaughter, of course, as we know, dying, it seems, off screen. Really, really tragic. That's very sad to see. But then, of course, the way it kind of he is the character who allows, kind of Joey to return to Albert, even though he's spent the money, of course, on the horse. So a very bittersweet moment. But in the end, it is, of course, satisfying to see Joey and Albert reunite, and I think just a wonderful film. It's a really emotional film, I feel, and I don't know, a lot of people, of course, do respond to this one, but personally I think it is a great film. I think, in terms of the filmmaking, it's just quite wowing actually for me. Really, certainly an achievement here. Cinematically, it's just absolutely stunning. I feel the cinematography, the lighting, this is a real kind of return to the more natural, beautiful films of Spielberg. I think for a time, even films that I love like War of the Worlds, I think there is something about the cinematography that I don't like as much as his kind of past works. But I feel that War Horse is kind of one that kind of, it's I think it's just to do with the kind of very, very modern, maybe saturated look that I think a lot of even War of the Worlds at times has, just in comparison. Not that that's kind of a flaw too much with them films, because even Catch Me If You Can, kind of less so, but slightly still has this kind of slight, kind of grey, kind of, maybe a little bit saturated, as I say, kind of look to the colour palettes, the tones here, and that film, it is a masterpiece for me, Catch Me If You Can, but yeah, even that in comparison to his earlier work, it just seems a bit too, modern, just in comparison. Again, not flooring the film for that, but this film, I'm saying, is a film that it does return to the more natural, you could say, just, I think warm feelings, and kind of the different colours perhaps, and the way the film looks just in general, to his earlier works, I think, it's really, really wonderful to see that really, and I think the cinematography here is definitely the best really of the century for Spielberg. I think it really is a stunning film in every regard. The editing is stunning. Them transitions, them kind of them wonderful moments towards the end of the film. Just really, really mastering sunsets there, and the way just the overall composition. I guess a lot of people would say that's overdone, perhaps in them scenes, but I personally love the way the film looks, and then ending shots, just absolutely stunning in my opinion. Just wow, what a film. And the music, of course, truly emotional, but it's this film that is truly inspirational in my opinion for all this wonderful tale, friendship, of loyalty, perhaps to between a trainer and an animal, of course, and just how it kind of it spans across quite a few years throughout this tragic and kind of horrific event, of course, World War One, and just the way it kind of infuses the feeling here of this war, particularly, and different stories that represent different areas, locations, different sides of the war, and how it kind of, it's a perfect balance. I feel there's not any bias. I feel really in this film. There's no one-sided moments, I feel, and in that sense, it's just a perfectly balanced film in its tone as well. As I've said, just a film that never goes too far in the comedy. A film that really, when it needs to be, it's very, very kind of serious and powerful, and also just a magical feeling, an adventure spirit throughout the film, even in the war scenes, of course, and one that really comes to a conclusion that is truly wonderful in my opinion. Yes, an absolute masterpiece in my opinion. So yes, for me personally, this film is a full mark film, and actually I do think it's a masterpiece, as I've been saying. I think just every character really, all these kind of story beats, and everything in the filmmaking, the heart and soul of the film is all there. Kind of representing Spielberg, kind of for me at its best, really, of the century from what I've seen. This is my pick, I would say. It's just a stunning, stunning film, and a return for to many, many things. I feel that he was kind of brilliant to the cinema. Past before this kind of century specifically, and not disregarding all these films. He made so many great films this century, but I think this is the one that really returns to many traits, I feel, and absolutely gets full marks, and actually gets into my plus tiers, believe it or not. This kind of what people would say is a throwaway film. For me, I would give it 100% plus tier 3. This is a special film to me. I connect to it so much. I think it's a wonderful film, magical experience, very, very traumatic at times. It's a film that constantly fearing for this character, for this horse. This kind of what we would say is a protagonist maybe of Joey, and many other different characters in the film. Even though you see them very, very briefly, perhaps it's kind of something I get fully invested in. All these stories. Emily, especially, and the grandfather. I think that was a really, really emotional story there. Very upbeat, very uplifting. But then, basically, when it comes full circle and you find out kind of what happened there, it's very, very sad and truly, truly meaningful there. It says a lot. This film says a lot. I feel, and so it's such a kind of quite a short film, really, considering, but it's an epic film. The scope to the film is really something else, and just the peaceful nature of the film as well. At first, the kind of the opening act is just it's a perfect way to kind of set the film up, and all these kind of relationships, the bond, of course, and that's why throughout, I feel a truly, truly, emotional kind of. The emotional resonance to the film is all there. I could talk about this film for quite a while more, but I think we'll leave it there, really. We'll wrap up. I think, I don't really have to explain too much more, kind of why I love the film so much. It's just truly a wonderful, emotional film for me, and a truly majestic film, capturing, this kind of these certain areas, of course. It's particularly kind of Dartmoor and kind of parts of England so well. I think Spielberg really, really hats off to Spielberg here for capturing this so well, and kind of the feeling of it, the nostalgic feeling, and the beauty of it. This is one of his most beautiful films, just purely on that level. Such a wonderful film, and the scenery and the way it's just it kind of acts as a character here. I don't really have to explain too much more. And just a quick reminder here. This is my particular feelings towards a film. That's how I do my reviews, of course. This is just my personal preference, my reactions to a film, my personal, connection to a particular film. Everyone's different, and I think, a lot of you, of course, don't need to be, told, but I think there's been a couple of comments, over the last, few months, particularly quite recently, just regarding, not specifically going to say, but regarding maybe questioning my kind of, my ratings. Maybe you should do this. You should say this about the film. You should feel this way. Maybe you've given it a certain rating. A particular film. Why is this? Or just general things. Don't you think you've gone too far? I'm just gonna say. Everyone really should understand that cinema is subjective, and I am done now with actually answering questions like that. I'm not going to answer any more questions. Have you overrated this film or something like that? And I'm not, that's not just me kind of being, it's not. This is not a kind of attacking that, but it really is something I'm going to say. I'm not going to be responding to that kind of thing anymore. I'm just going to leave it because the rating, my unique rating system, just my thoughts on the film, purely personal. Everyone's different. Just speaks for itself. I think I don't really need to get into the kind of why. Once again, when you've seen the review, I'm not going to answer questions saying have you gotten this wrong, because as I say, someone might not like this film, someone may love the film. No one's wrong. That's not cinema. I welcome all opinions on films, and as long as you're respectful, that's the way. That's what cinema is. I think it's great to talk about films. I really loved doing this channel, and talking about films respectfully. Doesn't matter if we disagree, but as long as we can respect, this is not, there's not a sheet that says all the films, you know, you're allowed to say are masterpieces. There's not a sheet that says, you know, what's a great film by definition. You know, otherwise we probably wouldn't have films like 2001, A Space Odyssey, because it just wouldn't, you know, if someone was saying this is this and you're not allowed to do it, you know, kind of thing, you're not allowed to feel this way. That's just the way it is, you know, cinema, people try different things. Everyone's unique, and people respond to different films, you know. I think if someone doesn't like 2001, that's fine, you know, particularly, maybe that's an example. But it's a film that, of course, you know, if someone said, you know, that's just not how films are made, you can't do that, it wouldn't have been made, and that's the thing. Everything's personal here with cinema. Always open to that. I welcome you to give your own opinions on the film, and just the respect and the passion is what, you know, what brings this channel. Of course, you know, it makes this channel, and yeah, it's just a quick reminder there. But you know, I will continue doing things as I you know, as I kind of do them. Of course, just regarding that thing we said at the beginning, I do need to kind of see what's going on. I hope this is cleared up very soon with YouTube. They can at least give us a definition of what, you know, what is what with this grey area. You'll know what I'm talking about. Hopefully there. You know, I certainly was very shocked when this thing, you know, this email came and I actually saw what it was, because I think if it had been about 10 pages, you know, I think that would have been great. You know, I would have actually known, am I, you know, at threat here? But, you know, we don't. Unfortunately, I think, you know, certainly becoming, you know, when January comes around, you know, I think my channel really has to kind of, I really need to maybe make some changes or just be aware of it. Otherwise, I will have to kind of take some sort of action there. You know, I think, I don't know if my channel is at risk at all. Is this cap at risk? You know, that's how far it could go. You know, I don't know. I really don't know, you know, kind of what is what with that. You know, they have not explained it. You know, YouTube has not, you know, been clear enough, I feel, and that's when, you know, people, of course, everyone's getting worried, people are deleting their channels. I'm just going to say, I'm not going to delete my channel, but really, my channel, I hope, you know, will, you know, kind of stay the same, really. I plan to carry on and kind of open things up, but, you know, hopefully I can get that kind of cleared up very soon, and I can get back to you. We'll probably do an update video on that. And yes, you know, that's what we'll say for now. We'll get back to the subject, you know, maybe in a week or so. We'll see what's what. As I say, I don't know anything really yet. It's just the kind of thing that everyone's questioning. There's no doubt people are not, and yes, you know, I think we'll just continue as we are for now, and hope for the best. But yes, as always, tell me your thoughts in the comments. You know, this film for me is wonderful. You know, I really love this film, and it's just a wonderful, warm, nostalgic, and truly powerful Spielberg film with so much heart and charm and magic. You know, I love when he's at his best, and this is certainly not one of his, you know, very, very best films, but certainly one of, in my opinion, my personal opinion, one of his masterpieces. And yes, as always, thanks for watching my review.